In Persona PSP, I believe that there is no truly bad party member. I do believe there are certain circumstances that can make one character better than another, like how I restricted everyone to their starter personas in my starter persona only run of this game. Ultimate personas may make one character better than another, and some of the guns and physical weapons these characters use can be defined as better or worse than another. However, these are simply examples of characters being better than one another, not them being bad. I simply believe there is no truly bad character in this game, just bad personas. In that same sense, because of the game's difficulty, I could also state that any of these 9 characters can solo the game. With just one problem: availability. Excluding the main character, everyone in the Seebeck route can't solo the game all on their own, because they don't stick with you the entire game. And, in the first dungeon, you only have 4 characters, but you're guaranteed to at least not have one of them because of the route split, with Mark going to Seebeck and Yukino going to Snow Queen. However, since no one leaves your party at any point in Snow Queen, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that once you enter that route, you can pick anyone to beat the game, and, if you're smart, they will. So that's the idea for this video. I want to see if Yukino Mayuzumi, the star of the Snow Queen route, can beat the game all on her own. The rules are that I can't use anyone other than Yukino in or out of combat, excluding the main character who, of course, has to walk everywhere for us. Every other party member other than Yukino must always guard until they die when in battle, because I can't undeploy them, and I can't get the bad ending. Plus, as a personal challenge, I want to get her ultimate persona, because I never actually got hers before this run. I hope that, with this vocal commentary, I can actually explain all the strategies I use in this run. Either way, I hope you enjoy this challenge run. Can Yukino Mayuzumi solo the Snow Queen route? I do want to discuss Yukino as a party member first, so we can understand what makes her shine. Yukino's arcana is the Empress, which isn't too impressive. The earliest we can get an actually good persona out of her line is Brigid, at level 36. But it's not even that good, honestly. However, her initial persona, Vesta, is actually pretty good. Since you get it at the start, it's really easy to get this thing all the way to rank 7 in the hospital. Along with that, it's got pretty amazing coverage with both a medium nuclear spell and a multi-target fire spell. In my starter personas only route, I believe that Yukino, paired with Vesta, is actually the best party member you can get in that route, simply because it doesn't fall off nearly as hard as the rest. However, in Persona 1, Empress isn't the only arcana she's actually proficient in. Including Empress, she has a best affinity with the Lovers, Temperance, Hermit, Strength, Star, and Sun arcana. However, she cannot use Tower, Priestess, Hanged Man, or Moon personas due to her worst affinity with them. If you ask me, being unable to use Tower, Hanged Man, or Moon personas is actually a blessing in disguise. Because those personas actually suck and require you to be at a high level to use the good personas in their list. Anyway, this is just a lot of me rambling to just say Yukino has a really good selection of personas, and the ones she can't use aren't even that good anyway. Yukino's strength isn't just her good range of best personas, however. The 3 stats that she prioritizes leveling up is agility, strength, and vitality. Agility is literally the best stat in the game because the higher your agility is, the more likely you are to act first in battle. It's also pretty much essential to have an agility stat of 75 or higher to outspeed the final boss. But I'll discuss that when it's important. It's just simply amazing that she has this, and vitality too, because more bulk is always going to be nice. The only stat that sucks out of these 3 is strength. Strength is literally the worst stat in the game, especially for her, because her physical weapons suck. Throwable weapons are just awful, no question. Though I guess strength can maybe make them suck a little less. But I won't be using her weapons often at all, except the shotgun. This weapon also sucks, but if she uses it, her persona summoning animation changes. And summoning a persona with a shotgun looks cool as hell. So I'm gonna do that often. Anyway, these are most of if not all of Yukino's strengths and weaknesses initially. Now we can actually continue the run. There isn't a lot to discuss from what I did in the hospital, though Nanjo, Mark, and the main character were forced to use their personas. Every time a persona awakening occurs, it is completely impossible for me to not have them attack. Because of this, I won't be counting these moments in the solo run. Anyway, the equipment and items we get here is decent, but we're going to arrive at the school later, which by visiting the club rooms can give us equal or better gear and tools. What is important, however, is that we obtain a metal card from a demon either in this area or the outside map. Money is something I don't want to worry about, and with gambling and a couple saves I can make that happen. The best way we can do that is by killing some demons here, and hoping we get what we need. That's not all, however. I also wanted to get to rank 7. Obviously to unlock the stronger skills that, in future dungeons, is going to be very, very useful. However, no matter how many demons we kill, we cannot grind EXP. Because of a mechanic in the first Persona game, party members that leave your party will actually return to you at around the same level the protagonist is. Considering we're not using him, Yukino will not gain any more levels than he does. Which, in this case, considering how we're going to engage in one more Persona Awakening battle, should be a minimum of 2. It's strange, but understandable. On another note, I managed to pick up some demon cards for some future fusion shenanigans. Trust me when I say this, we are going to have a lot of fun with fusion in this run. After 2 or so runs of not using other personas, I'm going to take full advantage of broken mechanics. Right. Speaking of one more awakening battle, Ellie joins us temporarily, then Mark and Nanjo leave us permanently. And then, after some more walking, we arrive at the school, Yukino and Ellie leave us, and we're forced to do the shopping list to get into the Snow Queen route. That's the opening dungeon area done, so to speak. After the main character does, I don't know, literally unleash fucking evil and damnation upon their high school because he's bored and wanted to see what would happen, the Snow Queen route finally begins. Our party starts out as the main character, who I swear to God should be behind bars for what he just did. Yukino, who will be killing everything she can. And Ayase, who, in this labyrinth filled with ice, will do the job of warming the benches for the rest of our party. Because I wanted to spice this run up compared to the other Persona PSP runs I did, I decided to pick Brown this time around, and chose Ellie over Nanjo. We also gain access to several shops, the Velvet Room, and most importantly, a casino, where we can do the most fun thing in the world, gamble. I keep rambling and rambling about why gambling is amazing, but I should actually explain why. Most of the rewards are nothing too special, especially the second and third place rewards. A single tablet from each machine, or a consumable item that hardly matters. However, the first place reward for every machine is insanely worth it. Along with a bonus, 1 million coins, which you can use to purchase a metric ton of tablets and other items which you can sell for millions of dollars. Not only that, you can get an incense set, which just boosts the stats of a character. A stone set, which holds one of each stone. Stones, by the way, are like damaging items, so you can have multi-target heavy fire items as early as the first dungeon, just from, of course, gambling. And 99 metal cards, which allows you to gamble even more if you're bored. Of course, I won't spam these items much. I did an entire challenge run proving this is overpowered. But I sure as hell can do some other shenanigans with these stones. Anyway, because of saves, if I fail to get the first place prize, I can easily just redo it until I win. However, I don't know the odds of, like, beating Sudoku on the first try. Though I'd say it's a 1 in 81 chance you get this, which isn't really that bad. Of course, I wouldn't know. I used save states. That's right, I cheated. I cheated gambling. I hate gambling. I take it all back. I despise gambling. You think I'm playing this game to gamble? I'm playing this game to win. Ha 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 ha! Anyway, after setting fire to someone's dick, we can finally begin the first dungeon, Hypnos. Random encounters are hardly a problem early on in this playthrough. at least for the first 2 dungeons. Because of how Persona's EXP system works, none of the party members in Yukino's party will actually get any EXP because they don't participate in combat whatsoever. Meanwhile, Yukino will get a lion's share of the EXP. At least, I think. It's been over a year or 2 since I've played the first Persona game, so don't quote me on this. Anyway, Yukino just has to simply climb the tower, bust some skulls, make sure her pals and gals get their skulls cleaved in, and all that nonsense. Now, the thing I want to discuss is the halfway point, when we reach the Velvet Room. Now, I wanted to save this for later because I believed Vesta would be enough to take down the first boss with ease. However, I saw I could fuse a Jack Frost. And like, come on, that's the literal mascot demon for this franchise. What a cute little guy. And I happened to have around 99 scorching tablets, for insurance. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, it came to me. A grand idea. So I injected this little guy with the power to a neutron star. I swear to God, Yukino just made a couple of these zombies relive Nagasaki. This was completely broken, but at the same time, extremely hilarious. The random encounters, however, were never something that was important about the Hypnos Tower. There's exactly one boss here, and I have a lot to say about them. Let's talk about Hypnos, the world's worst boss to ever fight in a solo run. My first attempt starts with most my party members except Yukino near death, which is perfect because these people have to die. I cast Megadolon, expecting it to do some decent damage. However, out of the total 1230 health the boss has, it only deals 80. This boss, surprisingly, has no magical weakness. None. They're only weak to physical damage, which despite Yukino's strength stat, is awful because her weaponry sucks. She couldn't even use her gun, because Hypnos actually resists that too. Hypnos drains fire, ice, electricity, and bless, meaning Vesta could only use Freyla against them to deal any real damage. And I can't use my Jack Frost that I just fused because of something I forgot to note. Jack Frost is weak to blast. Hypnos has a medium damage blast skill that he will spam over and over and over and over and over and over again. And since I fuse no other persona, this means that for this boss, unless I want to repeat the entire dungeon again, I'll be forced to use Vesta, who thankfully resists blast damage by half. She, however, takes the full brunt of Hypnos' Flurry Stab, a heavy axe attack. Whenever this lands on her, there's even a good chance it'll crit, possibly give her a status effect, and force me to waste a turn healing. Because Yukino's agility is only decent, she can't actually outspeed Hypnos. Meaning if she does try to heal the damage he's done, he'll more than likely damage her some more before she has the chance to recover, possibly ending the run then and there. Basically, Hypnos will kill you. And without spamming items, which I am hesitant to do, you will have a hard time killing him. However, you may be thinking to yourself, this just means you have to keep a consistent pace of healing yourselves, along with dealing damage, balancing out putting the pressure on him, then healing when you believe you're in a corner. That's such a smart idea. I thought that too. Until... Hypnos has 2 skills, Dormina and Dark Slumber. Dark Slumber cannot be resisted, so there's just that. But the status effect these 2 skills give will absolutely kill you if Hypnos does anything other than flub his turns like a big stupid idiot. Sleep. You cannot act when this occurs, and Hypnos isn't fair. Persona bosses don't do certain actions in certain turns. They could either forget this move completely exists, or spam it against you until you die, and you can't do anything about it. There's no persona at this level that resists status skills, at least from my memory. You could possibly set up a way to dodge this ability, but that still turns this battle as a luck-based nightmare. On average, a Freyla against Hypnos will deal 50 damage, meaning it'll take a minimum of 25 turns to kill Hypnos, not counting when he blocks or sleeps up, or when we need to heal, or any of that junk. If you weren't listening to me for this past yapping session, let me explain it all real simple. Hypnos is a roadblock. and the only way to beat them will be to bash our brains against a wall with Yukino until I find something out. So I did. The best thing Hypnos can do is kill your other party members. Because you can't remove them from this fight, treat their lives like a countdown of sorts, and it hits 0 when Yukino is the last party member alive. During this time, it's heavily unlikely for Hypnos to hit you with his basic attack of Flurry Stab, meaning whenever he uses those 2 moves, you actually have a free window to deal some damage to him. Along with that, if he uses Quicka, he's basically wasting his turn. Quicka gives the counter status, but that only takes effect if Yukino hits them with a physical attack, which she won't, because as I keep stating over and over and over again, her physical weapons suck. Paired with Garden, this means that Hypnos has 7 actions he can perform, with only 3 of them being able to directly screw with Yukino, while your other meatbags are still alive. After several attempts, I learned that Dark Slumber might actually be more preferable over Dormina, because I think that has a slightly lower chance of sleep. Though I'm not 100% sure, maybe I was just luckier with that move. You can't do anything about avoiding it, so the best you can do is hope he uses it when all your party members are alive, or when it's going to be the least effective at killing Yukino. On average, a Dark Slumber will deal 30% of our health, a Flurry Stab does 17% of our health, and a Western Blow, when resisted, does 16% of our health, which goes to show just how stupidly powerful magic is in this game. In simple terms, we can take a minimum of 2 turns worth of getting hit and hitting back before it gets too dangerous. However, the basic rule is to always stay above 50% health. Once you dip below that, use Dia on yourself. You can't fight him when you're asleep, however how long you're asleep is always going to be consistent. With Dormina, you'll only be unable to act for 1 turn. For Dark Slumber, you'll be unable to act for 3, which can and will kill you. However, the only way he'll be able to consistently kill you is if he gets a critical hit, or if he keeps spamming Dark Slumber. 3 hits of Western Blow, a basic attack, or a no-crit Flurry Stab will deal around 50%. Dark Slumber is the worst thing to be hit by during this sequence, because there's a chance it'll actually extend your nap time even more. There's nothing you can do during this stage other than praying that this doesn't happen. During this fight, and I hate to admit it, I started using items. A Scorching Tablet against Hypnos would deal on average 42 damage, which is not a lot. But it does mean I could at a minimum kill him in 30 to 35 turns if I constantly attacked him. Because I have Vesta equipped, the damage my items do is actually reduced because of her lower magic attack stat. Go figure. However, after around 20-30 turns, I grew sick of myself, or maybe I realized I was wasting thousands of dollars of free damage on Hypnos, so I swapped back to Freyla. I really did feel like I was close to beating him, just slowly inching further and further towards Hypnos. He seemed to be holding back on Dark Slumber, and though he put sleep on me using Dormina a couple times, he could never take full advantage of it. That was, until nearing the end of the fight. Hypnos finally casted Dark Slumber, putting me to sleep for 3 turns. The first and second turn he spent spamming Western Blow, which put me far below 50%, right at 50 HP. With his next turn, he spent trying to cast Dormina. Luckily, however, in Yukino's comatose state, pure, raw adrenaline beat the raw might of Natrol Melatonin Fast Dissolve tablets. Right after, I tried casting Dia on myself, but Hypnos immediately aimed another Dormina on me. Somehow, Yukino managed to dodge both Dorminas, which was extremely lucky. After the final bit of healing, and just 2 more Freylas, the biggest roadblock in our run so far was taken down by one sole person, Yukino Mayuzumi. After the hellhole that was Hypnos, I head straight to the Devil's Peak to get some demon cards without having to worry about a time limit. I guess I forgot to mention, the traditionally first and second towers, Hypnos and Nemesis, both have time limits to them. Speaking of Hypnos, because of how much EXP we got from the Hypnos battle, Yukino can make just so many personas. I decide to fuse a Pyrojack with Mamagnadine, finally filling up our persona slots until we eventually bench some of these little guys. Which I do when I fuse my next persona, Anubis. I fuse them mostly because while they resist practically nothing, their only weakness would be whip damage, because no enemies in the Snow Queen route uses guns. I also put Mabufadine on them for extra coverage. At this stage of the game, however, random encounters go from mild SP wasters into actual threats that end your life when they feel like it. Status effects like charm and sleep can still ruin us because we have no way to cure that all on our own. And enemies are now more likely to have expel or death spells, which actually can kill us if we're not careful because of their damage over time effects. Anyway, after a quick upgrade to my gear, I decide to quickly jump into Nemesis Tower. I talk to a person. I then walk around a little bit. I talk to a person. I then walk around a little bit. And wow, we're already at the boss. Nemesis Tower is the shortest dungeon in the route, and the boss is, well, not much longer, honestly. Though let's discuss Nemesis a small bit. Nemesis's moveset looks pretty crazy at first. I mean, she might be slightly weak to a lot of things, but Maziodine on the second dungeon, Dragon Whirl, a heavy spear attack, and she even has a heavy almighty. Without a doubt, this boss is probably stronger than Hypnos. It even has the chance to stone you, which will actually instantly end the battle in a loss. So that sucks. And yet, if anyone has ever played this route, like, at all, you'll realize that she has a really horrifying move pool, but has the attack power of a wet noodle. She can't even one-shot Ellie, who to her credit is guarding, but is also weak to physical attacks and was level, to my knowledge, 13. Against a level 31 boss. Mamagnadine. Once Nemesis is dead, all we have left to do is just check out Devil's Peak again for some stronger demons. Knowing that Thanatos Tower was ahead, I realized that I really needed to get some better personas. Random encounters were actually a small problem when going through Nemesis, and with the demons from that tower appearing here, it only made me further realize just how underpowered Yukino was. Along with this, most of the personas I fused were still at pretty low ranks. Persona stats actually keep increasing, all the way to rank 8, so I was basically holding myself back by not training them. So, for a couple hours, I just kept grinding the strongest demons there, returning to the ferry to heal, killing some more demons, picking up cards when I felt like it, and fusing at least one persona, namely Kuchulin, who I gave the skill Omega Cluster to. If you're wondering what it does, good. So did I. I had never seen this skill before this, but it apparently kills one target per turn, every turn, and is a curse attack, which is a horrible element to use in a dungeon where cursed damage is more likely to be chucked at you than for them to be weak to it. After an hour or so worth of grinding and equipped with a Pyrojack, a Anubis, and a Kuchulan, I stepped into the hell that would be Thanatos Tower. I haven't properly discussed why this dungeon sucks. All I've shown is me dying plenty of times. I should begin to state that, honestly, this is awful. Like every other dungeon in this route, there are no save rooms along the way. So if you're playing without save states, no matter how far you made it, even if you made it right to the boss, if you just happen to die at any point, you're going right back to the start. Losing all those levels, loot, mirror shards, everything. This is worse when you only have one life, because we can't use the other party members to revive us. In Hypnos and Nemesis, this wasn't really a problem. Nemesis especially, with how quickly you can beat that dungeon, and with the strength of enemy demons still being relatively weak. Thanatos, however, does a lot of walking, a lot of strong enemies which, mind you probably can't run from most of the time for some reason. A lot of floors, a lot of dying, just a lot of everything, honestly. Instant death skills, ailments, these things are still threats to us. We don't really have a persona we can use that stops both instant death attacks and blocks ailments. At least not yet. And the quickest way to grind and get that persona is, no joke, going through Thanatos. So we have to go through Thanatos to get the persona that's meant for Thanatos. This is actual torture. However, because every random encounter has certain formations of demons, we can actually learn which is the best approach for every battle. For example, against a fleet of Arachne, there will always be 3 in the front and 1 in each of the corners in the back. For this, you should use a Maw skill that hits every single target in the field, and because they're weak to fire, ice, wind, and earth, having a persona with one of those elements can easily sweep them. However, using two Megadeland in a row is also a decent choice, but remember to keep your SP in check. Using your persona too much will just drain you, and we only have so much SP items. Against most demons, as little as 1 or 2 Megadolans will do the trick. However, some formations, like the 3 Funbaba, will take 3 hits since they resist nuke by half and have a decent magic defense stat. Against a fleet of powers, they actually null a majority of magic in this game except for Curse and Death, which we don't have a good supply of. Along with that, because of Yukino's range with both her throwing weapons and shotgun, getting a good hit on these guys in any formation is nigh impossible. So it's best to try your best to run, even if the odds aren't good. However, in a formation where there is 1 power in the back and a bunch of demons in the front, spam Megadolon or whatever element until they're all dead, then use the shotgun on power. It'll take a bit, mostly because they aren't weak to shotguns, and they like to heal themselves. Another demon that's immune to our Megadolon is the fleet of Eligors. However, they're actually in such a position that Yukino's basic attack is actually pretty effective against them. However, do keep in mind, Yukino's physical weapons suck. A lot. So they're more than likely to attack you several times over, but they're unlikely to actually kill you on their own. Yukino's avoid chance against most enemies isn't actually too bad. In fact, at our level, we're consistently dodging around half of all attacks thrown at us, and we're face-tanking everything we don't dodge, with varying levels of success. Eventually, the higher up we go, the more demon variety there is. Especially when we enter Tartarus, where we get mostly new formations like a pack of Orthus and Yaxinis, with an occasional Naga and Chileno or Tisiphone thrown into the mix. However, compared to before, this is actually a much more preferable list of demons. The only demon that we can encounter that'll give us trouble will be Power, who nulls nuclear damage. And the only one of these demons with an Expel spell is Yaxini, which is a pain. But honestly, it's better than before. The only thing we have to worry about when we get the extra mirror shards in Tartarus are ailments. Bind will 100% kill us if it's stacked up too much, and Guilt gives the enemies some extra turns to bash our brains in. But other than that, this part is a gentle breeze compared to what we had to go through before. Soon after we encounter Tartarus, we find the only mercy we're given, a room containing Trish, so we can refill our HP and SP for a small price, a shop to get new gear, and the Velvet Room. I make sure to get some fusion cards for the Goliath we are about to create, Otohime. When you first look at this persona, you start to realize that it's literally weak to every single element, except for Expel and Miracle. However, the key thing to note is its notably high vitality, its fantastic magical defense stat paired with its magical attack stat, and its resistance to most forms of physical damage. I love Otohime, man. so much. Not only that, it resists nerve by half. Ailments have proved to be more painful than actual damage, because most random encounters can be simply solved by outspeeding them and killing them in 1 or 2 turns. Ailments are the only thing in the way of my glass cannon Yukino strategy, plus it helps that she drains one of the instant death options. If I was just 1 level higher and had more demon card variety, specifically with some of the races, I would have the perfect persona against Thanatos Tower. Otoheim is just the next best thing. Pair her up with a good skill like Maragidine, which will be useful against Thanatos' tentacles, and you basically have a solid counter for the next couple floors. The final floors are probably the worst this dungeon has to offer, mostly because of one demon, Sumazome. If you meet this demon, it'll more than likely inflict charm on you if you don't kill them immediately, and you'll never find one on her own. She always appears in duos, and my god, I don't even have to explain why charm is awful. You're seeing it right now. You'll also meet Alistair, who is also immune to any magic we can throw at them. Doppelgangers, who would be a problem if they didn't just die instantly. Rakshasa, they die too. Incubus, who's immune to our spells but is in such a formation that we can actually spam our shotgun till they die. Cupids, which waste our SP. And all of these demons could just get into random formations with each other, which is a bit annoying, but Otoheim and Marduk make this dungeon a lot more bearable. The worst demons literally appear on the literal final floor of the dungeon. Seriously, these are final dungeon demons. Whoever decided to make the toughest battles in this dungeon happen, dead last is a sadist. But slowly, barely, I made it all the way from the bottom to the top, finally giving me the chance to finally see how Yukino can do against Thanatos and her tentacle goons. After everything Yukino went through, this battle shouldn't be so bad. Thanatos on paper doesn't look very threatening. She's weak to fire and nuclear damage, which we have plenty of, and the only way she can hurt us is with Dark Verdict, a heavy curse skill that does med damage against our bulk, and a basic attack. She has 6 tentacles that will do nothing but smack us. However, the damage they do is hardly negligible. The only thing annoying about them is that both the groups are weak to different elements, while draining the elements they're not weak to, meaning you can't use Maragidine or Megidolaon on them without also healing the other tentacles. Though really, that just means we have to spend slightly longer on killing them, as Thanatos can't transform until all of the tentacles are dead. Thankfully, their HP is relatively low, so they're a mild annoyance at best. However, there is a problem amongst all this nonsense. Thanatos has access to Dethica and Hell Eyes. However, for our purposes, they're the exact same skill. If they hit Yukino, we instantly die. That's it. The only way we can block it would be to null death or curse. However, neither Marduk nor Otohime resist these skills. And since I'm an idiot and don't have the persona that would null these things, it basically means whenever Hell Eyes or Dethica occurs, we risk just straight up dying. And there's nothing we can do about it. This is just what we went through with Hypnos, but worse. And the worst part? We can theoretically get lucky and have Thanatos choose a skill other than Hell Eyes or Dethica over and over again, while dodging the times she does cast these skills. A 2 in 8 chance of her using these skills isn't too bad if we can speed up the fight. It's the fact she has a second phase, and in that phase, she will only cast Hell Eyes. I once tested it, and not once did I ever see her use a basic attack. Considering how the second phase has around 1000 HP, we'd have to dodge Dethica several times in a row just to succeed. After my first attempt ended because of this, I had to rethink my strategy. And also I had to stop being stupid and use the best persona in the entire run. I've been hyping him up for too long, but it's time to finally introduce the perfect persona ever. The person that turns this entire fight into a joke. And his name is Loki.
Domain expansion, gravity flux.
If you wanted an MVP for this run, it's not going to be Vesta or Jack Frost or that Chuchulin I fused and then proceeded to never use. It's going to be Loki. He resists quite literally everything this game has to offer except for spear damage, which we'll likely never see, and Expel and Miracle. He completely nulls Nerve, and he drains Death and Curse. you may realize that this entire playthrough, I've stated that the only things that can harm us are ailments and instant kill spells. With Loki, we only have to ever worry about Expel for the rest of the game. If I loved Ottoheim for resisting all physical skills, then I am on my knees proposing to Loki for their resistances to death and ailments. That's not all. I gave him Marigadine, which although it's not the best element, it's amazing against, the Snow Queen, who's made of snow. And it's just a solid element all around. And though most of their innate skills aren't entirely useful. With Marin Karen, Bind Voice, and Fist of Fury, a light fist damage skill that hits one target being entirely meme-worthy skills. He does have one skill that'll become very, very useful later. I'll tell you which one when the time comes. Loki's only drawback is that, again, he's weak to expel damage, and the fact that he costs so much SP to summon and use. A constant 31 SP cost is pretty expensive, even by late game standards. So no matter what skill we use, we'll eventually be drained after a couple random encounters without a constant flow of SP items. Despite these flaws, Loki's use can never, ever be understated. And if it weren't for him, this run would probably have been a lot worse. Now, let's get on to the fight. I lost the footage. Yeah, I only realized after I beat Thanatos, but my winning attempt got deleted. So, with Loki and Marduk in hand, I went ahead and began another winning attempt against Thanatos. This sequence of events has haunted me in Persona PSP for so long, man. I remember uploading a clip of this and trying to explain just why everything happened. I mean, now that this run has been forced to see this, I should try and explain every single detail before Thanatos dies. I remember seeing the main character and Ellie both take 9999 damage from just one dark verdict from Thanatos. So I thought to myself while I was doing this second clear, man, that's a lot of damage. What happens if I reflect that? And so, out of the kindness of my own heart, and because I'm a genius at heart, I put up a magic guard. Then, Thanatos took more damage than they could reasonably take. However, they didn't transform into their second phase, which is odd. However, this might be explainable, which also explains why the tentacles suddenly die shortly after Thanatos transform. I think we literally broke the coding of the Thanatos boss fight. You see, Thanatos has a total of 2850 HP, and I don't believe she can actually die before you kill the worms. Maybe there's some trigger that stops this from happening. However, in one attack we dealt more damage than she could possibly have as her HP. In essence, we went over her limit. Normally this is impossible, because there is no rational way to create this much damage in one attack normally. However, you have to remember these key details. In Thanatos Tower, when a party member dies, their persona is taken away from them, meaning their magic defense is also taken away from them, meaning they take far more damage from any magic attack Thanatos can deal to them. Along with this, they're generally under-leveled, I believe. They've barely encountered combat outside of getting crumbs of EXP from Yukino's kills, by just simply being alive. So the damage they took probably increased even more, with their vitality stats being so low. Now, with a magic guard, we were able to reflect 25% of the damage that Dark Verdict would do away from Brown and Ayase, which so happened to equal 31-32 damage. Next, we then reflected their next attack, which would have done an addition 3000 or so damage. However, it read this as a miss. Now this is me speaking hypothetically, but I believe it could have just been 1 damage or 1000, it didn't matter which. We just hit Thanatos while they were in the red, which the game probably understood as the first phase ending, ignoring probably one of the triggers this fight has. This would lead to her not only transforming, but her also having her goons die right in front of her. Which is just crazy. As for why ASE suddenly decided to bitch slap the rotting corpse of our main character, there could be several reasons why. After all, the main character caused the Snow Queen quest to happen, so maybe Ayase gained some sentience and wanted to punt their face in. Other than that, I have no idea. You couldn't pay me to come up with a reason as to why that happened. However, this weird set of events lead to me entering Thanatos' second phase extremely early. And just 2 minutes later, and with some Marigadines casted onto them, I sort of killed them. This was the most conflicted moment of the run to me because, I sort of broke the rules. I was in a state of shock as to what just happened. So I accidentally saved over the fight. But I used a party member as not just a meat shield, but a meat torpedo to help kill the boss. So honestly, challenge failed. I beat Thanatos once, but the footage was lost or corrupted or something. I don't know. I spent hours of my life in Thanatos, and just like the souls kept in Tartarus, I too have lost a piece of myself in this dungeon. Let's just move on. Because I collected enough mirror shards to not get the bad ending, which is an actual game mechanic that has ruined one of my runs in the past, we can immediately go from fighting Thanatos to killing Lady Masquerade. And you know what? I prefer that over a dungeon that nearly took me 3 hours. Let's discuss the match. Lady Masquerade has some decent firepower along with coverage. Other than her basic attack that every character has, she isn't packing a single skill that isn't a heavy attack. Mabufadine and Magradine mean we have to watch out for any ice or gravity damage, and Heavenly Hit also serves as a decent physical damage option. Paralyze can inflict paralyze onto us, which will instantly end the battle if we get hit by it. And for the first time since this game has began, a boss has a buff skill in the form of Tarukaja. Though you must remember, this game is no longer a challenge anymore. With the power of Loki, we resist everything she could possibly throw at us and null the ailment that could instantly end our run. Which just means we have to stab Marigadine on Lady Masquerade until she dies. And then the big problem with Loki peered its ugly head out again. SP. Loki is fundamentally balanced in this run because the power they have can't last an entire battle. Halfway through the fight, Yukino was too drained to cast a single spell with Loki, meaning we could no longer strike their weakness. Which is a pretty horrible thing to have happen, until you remember. You have Loki, who resists everything, and remember, one of Yukino's best stats is dexterity. Drop the witchcraft and remember that the protagonist isn't exactly on good terms with the ATF. Harness their power, whip out your shotgun, and shoot Lady Masquerade over and over again. You can always heal with items all the way to full, and if you feel like you're not dealing enough damage, remember, we still have plenty of stones left over from our gambling adventure. Chuck them if you feel like this fight is dragging on too long. Chuck them all. And eventually, Lady Masquerade will fall like the rest. Anyway, after killing the Snow Queen, you now have to kill Snow Queen 2. They made a sequel. We finally gain access to the final dungeon of this route, along with the final floors of Devil's Peak. Because this dungeon is long, and I mean really, really long. Around 10 floors of gameplay, though the final floor is just a small hallway with the boss in it. And there's plenty of map gimmicks here and there, along with a certain section that requires me to backtrack to the start for something neat. It's pretty much unavoidable to not talk about it in some depth. Mostly. I won't lie. I can't find the article for this dungeon on the fandom wiki, which has honestly been pretty useful for info. And the Persona 1 Wikidot doesn't show all demon information. And the Wikidot links a list of all the demons and levels and all that junk. But it's in Japanese. If you couldn't tell, the only language I can speak other than language is Japanese. Bottom ting. However, let me give you a rundown. The demons here range from level 43 all the way to level 71. with the final boss being level 75. With there being a total of 47 different demons here, all with a wider range of weaknesses, resistances, strategies, and all that. I can't possibly get into all of them. So let me explain my main strategy. Equip Loki. Set fire to everything. Even if Loki costs a total of 31 SP per use, Yukino's current max SP is 579. 579 divided by 31 is 18, meaning we can spam Loki around 18 times before we have to use SP recovery items. With our nearly unlimited funds, and with a hell of a lot of chewing souls and Hiranya, we're actually decently prepared to use Loki's assets throughout this dungeon. Plus, with a hell of a lot of rattle drinks and beads, we never have to worry about our HP being low outside of battle. The only problem the demons on the first floor might present is the ones that null fire. The demons are rarely in a formation for us to just blast them with a shotgun, so all we can do is just attempt to run away, which, even at our level, is still a difficult thing to do. However, because a majority of demons here are not immune to fire, or at a minimum have a resistance to it, and with our, as already stated, plenty of supplies, traveling through the dungeon isn't a problem. And as a bonus, the XP we gain here is insane and easy. Every 10 or 15 battles or so, we gain another level on Yukino. The more levels we have, the more options we have later down the road with what personas we can fuse, along with us gaining some bonus stats to vitality or agility, which will be very useful in the final boss. With that in mind, I traveled through the dungeon, racking up levels, left with some cards, and after picking up a totem we're going to use later, I decided to head straight to the Velvet Room. Specifically, I made this thing called Baal. Yeah, it's not really that good, so I'm not even going to go in depth to it. But I thought I'd have it in case I need miracle damage somewhere, or if I felt like using Bufudine. However, I fused another persona that's actually worth talking about, Yukino Mayuzumi's ultimate persona, Durga. I don't know if I'll ever have a chance to seriously rant about this except for now. Because this video is all about Yukino Mayuzumi, I get a free chance to talk about her ultimate persona, Durga, and I get to talk about it a while. It's a lot more interesting to talk about this persona, anyway, instead of what happens in the dungeon. Just keep in mind that every battle is solved with Loki. So let this soothing gameplay behind me wash you away as I talk about Durga. Durga is the worst ultimate persona in the game. The only ultimate persona that might be worse than this would be Mark Susano O, which might just be the Sebek version of this persona, or Brown's Tear. Actually, Tear might be the worst ultimate persona in the game because one of its moves makes the user kill itself. But I don't want to get into that. What we're discussing right now is Durga, which is underperforming, especially considering what route we're on, the Snow Queen route, which is the only route Yukino is playable on. For its upsides, it actually only costs 20 SP to use. If we use Yukino's current max SP total, 579, and divide it by 20, we actually get 28 to 29 full uses of this persona before we are drained, which does help us save on items used while traversing the dungeon. Along with this, it has some pretty decent coverage. If we count the medium damage moves, which aren't too bad to use this late in the game. She has gravity, curse, earth, physical, and electric coverage, which is pretty good, except for the fact that 2 of the moves she has is only single target, and one of the 3 multi-target attacks is a medium skill, and her heavy curse attack, Eternal Black, hits in an area instead of all targets, which could mean she has to spend more SP hitting everyone if the formations are screwed. So really, she has one good option to use against every enemy, Maziodine. Which isn't too bad, because most of our personas usually just spam one move on everyone anyway. Though electric is much more finicky to deal with, since there's not a lot of demons actually weak to electric attacks in the final dungeon, with most being neutral, resisting, or straight up null it. If she had Megidolon instead, that'd be pretty cool. You can't give Durga any skills either, because you use an item to fuse this persona and you can't use multiple items in a fusion, so we're stuck with these moves. But, oh well. Anyway, that's most of her positives are of the way. On to why it sucks. Its affinities to attacks in this game are horrendous. It's weak to 4 attacks, 5 if you count rifle attacks. But not a single enemy uses gun attacks in the Snow Queen route. It has 3 resistances, 4. if you count its resistance to an element you will never, ever see get used in this route unless you're on New Game Plus. And it only reflects one element, electricity. So, basically, this persona is only useful if your enemy uses electricity, blast, or gravity attacks, and they have a decent resistance to ailments. However, she's completely screwed against fire, ice, wind, and earth attacks, of which there are plenty in this route. Especially against the Snow Queen, who uses Mabufudine and Maragadine. She only resists 2 of Snow Queen's magic attacks. To every other element in this game, she has absolutely no resistance whatsoever to it. Which, hey, we've dealt with a lot of personas that are neutral to a ton of things. But an ultimate persona that is weak to 4 damage types and only resists 3? It's a pretty bad bargain in my eyes. Oh, and also, its magic attack and defense stat is nothing to write home about, at least compared to Loki. Really. Despite being 6 levels higher, it has 6 less magic attack and 23 less magic defense compared to Loki, which just goes to show just how amazing Loki is. In fact, in comparison to Loki, it's pretty much worse in every way. Its list of skills, although diverse, is situational, and you can't add any skills to make her better, unlike Loki, who we can just give Maragadine to. Its resistances are worse, being weak to multiple attacks the Snow Queen uses, while Loki resists nearly everything except Miracle and Expel. Its level is higher, and you can only use them in the last dungeon, unlike Loki, who in this run can be used near the end of Thanatos. Even comparing their stats reveals she's not any good. Which sucks, because a good persona can cover a bad stat a party member has if used right. Yes, her stats are vastly better than Loki in comparison, except agility, in which she's actually slower. Her stats, though, aren't very useful. They're mostly balanced, except for agility and luck, at around 40, and her luck, which is her highest stat, is at 49. Very, very unimpressive. I want to compare this to another ultimate persona, just to show how bad this is, but I might do another solo run sometime, and I want to keep it a secret. So let me just say from experience that, yeah, stats bad. There are so many downsides to using Yukino's ultimate persona that, honestly, it's better to just use any Loki instead. Which sucks, because I feel like it sort of detracts from the fact that this is a Yukino solo if I don't use her ultimate persona, a persona only she can use, rather than a persona that is widely available to any party member whose affinity isn't bad with it. However, it's the honest truth to this all. This persona just isn't useful for this route, and using it would be an active detriment. And I'll show why later. This persona sabotages us if we decide to use this over Loki. However, there is exactly one benefit we gain from using this persona and raising its rank all the way to 8. If we decide to, we can actually return this persona for the best throwing weapon in the game. Infinity. It has the highest attack out of any throwing weapon, hits every target on screen, has a high hit rate so it'll rarely miss, and even gives you a bonus, 5 strength, dexterity, and vitality. You can give up a persona you can only fuse maybe once in your entire playthrough, just for the best throwing weapon. This would technically benefit Yukino, whose weapons have been nothing but bad this entire playthrough. Except one thing. This weapon has 32 attack power. The shotgun you can purchase at the shop at the final dungeon, the Buy Buster, has an attack power of 80 and has a similar hit rate. It doesn't give any bonus stats, but I mean, you get the point. There is absolutely zero purpose to getting this weapon if you're aiming for pure damage, and the stat bonuses it gives is minor at best. It might be useful against enemies that null magic, but honestly, nah. I decided to just keep Durga, despite her suckiness, because the last thing I want to do is train Durga and waste my time for a knife that won't even be that useful in the long run. Plus, it just wouldn't seem right. Anyway, that was my big rant on why Durga pretty much sucks. Let's get back to the game. So we go up some floors, find some weird children. Brown says something very, very questionable. Find the sequel to the Snow Queen. Psych. Never mind that. I travel some more and alter the formation of my party to act as the perfect meat shield for Yukino so that they die as quickly as possible. I then set a save state before entering the room to encounter the final boss of this route, Nyx. Alright, compared to every single boss before this, Snow Queen is definitely the most challenging. This boss has 3 phases to it, which it can change at any point it decides to, with varying weaknesses and resistances. A combined 15,000 HP is also of note, meaning that this battle will take a long time with only Yukino dealing all the damage. In each of these phases, she swaps between her multiple multi-target elemental spells, which will do some decent damage if you're weak to fire, ice, blast, or electricity. That's her Blackhead form, or when the center version of her is active. You can tell it's this phase when the center head's eyes are glowing bright instead of it just being a shadow. For the other 2 phases, you can tell they're active if the head is facing towards you. When the right or green head is staring right at you, that's when they enter their ailment phase. There's 3 moves you have to look out for. Patrama, which will turn you to stone if you're not immune to ailments, and instantly end the fight. Makakaja, which will make the Blackhead's elemental attacks deal even more damage. Since this is Shin Megami Tensei Persona, you know, like SMT. These buffs don't actually wear off, and since we don't have Decaja, we can't remove them either. And finally, Decover. This will make it impossible for us to actually heal for 3 turns, which is definitely a pain because, you know, if we run out of health, we die. Big shock. The final phase to worry about is the yellow head, or the left one. This one has Rakukaya, which means that after a short bit, Nyx will have even more defense, meaning we'll deal even less damage to her. Symphony of Lament will inflict us with guilt if we aren't immune to ailments, which will have the chance of us not being able to attack Nyx some turns. And the most dangerous skill this phase has isn't even a damaging move, it's Diorama, the healing spell. This move heals for around 300 or so health, which is pretty bad, because they have a chance to dual cast this. That's right. Nyx has a total of 2 turns every round of combat, where she could swap phases, attack twice, heal twice, or do any sort of thing with her free time, along with guarding and the basic attack, which is universal to all phases of this fight. And this isn't like Nemesis, where this is a very frightening moveset for a boss that doesn't put up much of a fight. This is a very frightening moveset for a boss that will kick your ass if you're doing anything except the right thing at the right time. Because I pumped myself up with muscle drinks, Yukino has around 973 HP, which is an insane amount that would be overkill in any other playthrough. But for this fight, it's going to be necessary. In my first attempt against Nyx, I try to use Yukino's ultimate persona, Durga, to see if my army of high schoolers acting as meat shields, along with my boosted HP stat, could make this fight possible with Durga. But I didn't spend all that time before this fight, yapping about Durga being awful just to tell you I beat this on the first attempt with her. In fact, I lost. Hard. Even with Durga's resistance to nerve, Symphony of Lament actually has the unique gimmick of being non-elemental, meaning you can't resist it in any way, shape, or form, meaning I will constantly be hit by this move and have a chance to not strike the enemy. Along with this, remember how Durga is weak to fire and ice? Yeah, Nyx has that, in spades. She will chuck that at you harder than, I don't know, something that is chucked at something really hard. That means when Durga is against Nyx, she is constantly getting pelted at by magic, where she only has a 50% chance to not be heavily affected by it, while she herself does very little damage to the enemy, or, in most cases, does absolutely nothing to counter her. This is pretty bad for us, however that isn't what makes this fight completely impossible for us. It's something a lot more evil than just taking more damage and not being able to deal some back. It's something that's tied to Yukino as a character, and it cannot be changed easily. And for once, it's not her pitiful physical weapons that are the problem, it's her agility. For once, I'm actually going to discuss the stats of Yukino for this fight, because it's rarely been an issue before this. At this level, combined with the gear we acquired from shops, she has a stat total of 58 strength, 59 vitality, 52 dexterity, 71 agility, and 70 luck. Let me just say, her agility stat is amazing. Very amazing. And I'm glad she grows agility, because if she didn't, this fight would be far more difficult. However, 71 agility. This is just too little. If we wanted to outspeed Nyx, we'd need exactly 5 more points of speed, 76 agility. Now, why does me being slower than Nyx matter so much? It's because she always gets to act first in combat. This will lead to multiple outcomes, of which Yukino will most likely act last in. Nyx can hit Yukino, then hit her again, before Yukino can heal the last 2 attacks just dealt to her, meaning Nyx can hit us a total 4 times before we can even react to it. Nyx can swap phases and do whatever she likes. That, or hit us, and then immediately guard, meaning we can't even hit the correct weakness for the phase we were aiming for, or deal less damage in general with the move we were going to use. Nyx could do that. Or she could hit us and use all guard, meaning we can't even damage her after she hits us, which is just cruel. Symphony of Lament into anything also works, because now we're most likely inflicted with guilt and can't even hit her back while she does whatever she desires. She can dual cast Diorama too, so she can just heal twice and ruin so much effort we put it. This was just a short list of examples I provided, but most of them hinge on the fact that she always acts first. We could beat a majority of these options if we could just move first, but alas, our agility is just 5 points too low. So, what options does that give us? Grinding more enemies is such a boring way to win this run, along with it probably taking a lot of time to even do, and fusing a persona that has a really high agility stat could be more dubious than you think, because we'd basically have to use a persona whose resistances or weaknesses possibly don't fit well for this fight, and possibly with a couple skills we don't have much use of. We'd get the speed advantage, but probably not much else, unless we added a skill to them using a tablet. That's when I remembered. I did foreshadowing like 27 minutes ago. And would you look at that, Loki, who has pretty much solved every battle until now, has the exact thing we would need for this battle. Now that we look at Loki's skills again, do you see the skill that would potentially be useful in this fight? Good. I'm not going to give you a second to talk to your monitor or phone or TV or whatever you use to watch this video. It's Wolvan, that skill that for some reason isn't explained at all in any shape or form on what it does. However, if we look at our trusty wiki, we can actually understand what going beast mode apparently is. In their own words, bestial abilities shift with the moon's phase. All stats are synchronized with the moon phases, the fuller, the stronger. While it isn't 100% certain how much these stats are increased, considering we're only 5 points away from the total we desire, I decided to bet on it actually working. So I ran around outside the boss room for a bit, until it was a full moon to maximize the total stats I can gain. Then I re-enter the boss, this time prepared to see if this would be any more manageable. After a full moon bonus from Wolvan, Yukino is finally able to set up and act first in combat, which turns this fight from completely unfair to now just kind of unfair. Because we can still be afflicted with guilt, however, we have to stick with Loki and not swap personas. Something I'm more than alright with, because this thing resists or nulls everything Snow Queen can throw us. What needs to be noted now is when I can attack Snow Queen. Because of their varying resistances, I can't just spam Maragidin every phase. When the center phase is active, the Black Head, I decide to actually use the melee weapon this time around to deal effective damage. While the shotgun is nice, this is one of the few moments where Yukino's throwing weapon comes in handy because of its multi-hit effect. Even if it means we can't summon our persona with a shotgun, something I heavily regret, this is the most optimal method. Especially because she's weak to all melee and gun attacks in this phase. In every other phase, however, she's either weak or neutral to magic attacks, meaning I have free reign to spam Loki. You may be thinking to yourself, however, what about Loki's insane SP cost? And yes, that is a threat. However, Yukino has had plenty of levels throughout this dungeon. When Yukino started this dungeon, she was at level 57. Through our perilous journey, we actually gained lots and lots and lots of EXP. How much? Well, Yukino is actually now level 71, a total increase of 14 levels, meaning her total SP cap has also increased. Instead of a measly 579 SP, we're now at a total 705 SP. 705 divided by 31, Loki's SP cost, reveals we can use Loki a total 22 times. A total 4 times more than before. Yeah, that's not much. we're still going to be spamming SP recovery items every time the center phase is up. That's when we deal the least damage anyway. However, just like healing items, we don't have an infinite amount of them. Meaning, we're on a soft time limit before we do horrendous amounts of damage. And if Nyx out-heals our horrendous damage output, then we're basically stuck. Along with this, I only brought 38 SP recovery items, because I had to use plenty of them while traveling the dungeon. For once, using Loki has been a detriment. After a while, it became clear to me that I had to use Yukino's worst aspect far more this battle, Yukino's throwing weapon. No matter how bad the damage was a majority of the time, it didn't cost any SP, and I could use it while a Loki was up. So Nyx basically had to slowly get chipped with the power of 1,000 pointy needles. However, that's not the biggest threat. Not by a long shot, it's Nyx's damage output. It doesn't matter if we're using Loki, who resists everything. Loki is a level 51 persona, against a boss that's level 99. His magic defense stat is just simply starting to show cracks, which makes sense because I've been mostly playing like a glass cannon. We never had to worry about how much damage enemies dealt to us until now, and with every magic attack Nyx deals to us dealing a good chunk of damage, we have to prepare a healing item every now and then. And though we have plenty of rattle drinks and beads, we can't keep spamming them every time we're injured. Every turn we're not attacking is less damage we're dealing, and more progress we'd lose if Nyx casts Diorama. Meaning we can only do one thing, tough it out, and learn exactly how awful our health has to be before we have to worry. I realize that when my HP is around 400, I should definitely heal up, because Nyx deals around 100 or so damage each turn she casts a magical attack. But why 400? Because Persona is stupid sometimes. Sometimes, for no real reason, slower enemies can act first, for no understandable reason. Seriously, if anyone has an explanation for this, please tell me. I've wanted to know why for years. Anyway, if she can deal 100 or so damage a turn, then there's a real chance that she can cast something like Mabufudin twice. Then the game gets screwy, makes her act again, and she casts 2 Mabufudins again. The odds of this are really, really low, because Nyx would still choose at random what she does, and she's just as likely to swap phases or block as she is to cast a spell. But considering how long this fight is, the odds of this happening eventually aren't too low. In fact, it nearly happened partway through the fight. If there's anything you want to take from this fight, it's this. This teaches you that HP is a resource more than anything else. A small time limit. You're free to lose it without constantly healing to focus on damage. But you also want to make sure it's decently safe. So play offensively against Nyx, then defensively when you reach a threshold. And just keep repeating these moves. For half an hour, slowly, steadily, chip Nyx down, bit by bit. Until eventually, you cast one more Maragidine with the awesome power of Loki. And finally, see some real results. This video has been in the back of my mind for 2 years now. I've wondered and worked on ways to possibly present this in an interesting way. Honestly, I don't know why. This challenge run isn't very interesting, all things considered. It's one of my easier runs of Persona PSP. In fact, I'd rather go into depth of the starter Persona's only runs I did. Though, I lost the original footage of that. And I know this run wasn't super good. If I wanted to make this run more interesting, I would have focused entirely on using only Vesta and Durga, even if they're pretty meh, or just straight up bad, because that's a lot more interesting than spamming Loki till I win. So I might revisit this challenge run someday, probably on the Sebek route. Maybe with Maki and the main character. But despite how much I don't really like this run in retrospect, working on this video made me appreciate this run so much more. And I really enjoyed making this video. Even if you all had to listen to this stupid AI voice the entire time. I'll probably pick a more enjoyable voice to listen to the next time I do this. This video ended up dragging on longer than I thought, and the script for this video sort of sucked it because, again, it's been 2 years since I've finished this run. I was a bit hazy at points, trying to decipher why I did what at points, And sometimes I worked on the script at 1 a.m., so yeah, messed up my speech a bit at times. But this was an amazing time for me. I finally got to make a video I could be almost proud of. I'm not super proud of this, but if I make another video, I'm going to be way more proud of that one. I've got another run recorded for an entirely different game that I might edit, though trust me, I think I'd get bullied because of the game I played. Hint, it's an anime game. I've got 2 more ideas for challenge runs for Persona PSP, 1 for another solo run. Another idea being a low-level run, because Buffmeister failed their run, and I know I can easily do what they couldn't. Because I'm just better than that. And there's this low-level run of Persona 5 I have in mind. Or maybe even Persona 3 Reload when that game comes out. If this video made you feel all giddy inside or make you hug a loved one or something, leave a like. Don't subscribe though, because I'm never going to upload consistently. Especially not with me being in college now. And I'll leave you with this. Here's my best attempt to make the AI scream. Hey 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 hey.